Inglewood, Western Australia. It's a suburb about 5 kilometres out from the city of Perth. This is Beaufort Street. It's a very noisy street on a Friday afternoon. And this is where my art project, Suburban Secrets, an art trail and history walk. It goes from pub to pub, from the Civic Hotel to the Inglewood Hotel, which is the breadth of the suburb. We're standing outside the Clock Tower, or it's now called the Clock Tower, but it was called the Civic Theatre. It was built in 1935, and this is the entrance to the original theatre. So this artwork of mine here, a pub to pub, a streetscape, is displayed in this space. So the reason for doing this artwork is I wanted to really see what original old buildings and shops and houses are still left in this street from over the last 100 years. What has been replaced by modern buildings? We have a very new supermarket up the road. We have lots of 1980s buildings. So I just wanted to see, I was concerned that we might be losing that originality of Inglewood and what makes it unique to our suburb. They're ubiquitous little ordinary shops with big windows that can house butchers and bakers in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, to delicatessens, to pizza shops, and now quite often cafes and restaurants and giftware shops and gyms. But I wanted to see what those changes are. So this work represents, each strip represents 100 years of that particular piece of land. My original idea when I started this project was to have my artwork displayed in a pop-up shop somewhere along this street. However, as I was doing my research, I discovered lots and lots of old, really interesting photos of Inglewood, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to actually have them on show in the actual shops that they were the precursor of? And so we've got some in those shops and some photos across the road looking at those shops. This is, behind me is Treadway's shoe shop, which has recently bought out McCreary's shoe store, which has been there since the 1920s, when Mr McCreary was one of the many bootmakers along this strip of land. So we have a couple of gorgeous photos in the window of Mr McCreary and his family who were serving in the shop, and an exterior photo of them as it was in the 1950s. Any colonial settlers that arrived before 1830 were eligible to receive land grants. They called them ribbon grants because they were long, narrow strips of land that always went to a waterway, either to the river or to a large lake. So everyone got an equal opportunity to have access to water and good fertile soil. This work behind me is also divided up into those original ribbon grants. It has red outlines of those spaces, and that has somewhat determined how the suburb has been divided up and how there's some strange kinks in roads, and some of the houses are smaller and blocks are smaller than others. It's based on the original maps from retro maps that are from about the 1930s, and they were actually originally sewage maps, and they're from the Water Corporation. So what I've done is I've traced over those maps and hand-stitched on silk organza the outlines of all the houses and blocks that were current at that particular time. So you can see the houses, the small tiny little shops, the very large proportion of Inglewood that was set aside for a golf course. There's also a small amount of land that is called Inglewood Triangle, which has never been built on. It is now come back to being pretty much the original bushland that would have been in this area always. When I first started this project, I thought I need to look at what the land was like prior to white settlement. So this area called Inglewood Triangle was one of my reference points. This land has never been developed. It somehow escaped the bulldozer over the last 100 years. So it represents what the flora and fauna would look like over 100 years ago. It's a Banksia woodland, and we have lots of jarrah trees and marri and an undergrowth of all sorts of beautiful wildflowers. Inglewood Triangle is a beautiful example of what this area would have looked like, well actually all of the Perth area would have looked like well over 100 years ago. The series Ribbon Grants is based on the grants given to the first white settlers that arrived before the end of 1830. They were given long, narrow strips of land, which they called ribbon grants because of the shape of them, that all had access to water, so either to the river or to a large lake. So I've based this work on those long strips. I've used old woolen blankets that I've dyed dark grey, and then I've hand stitched representations of what this area of the bushland would have looked like at the time.
I'm Christy Goff and I'm the Public Art Officer at the City of Stirling. I was involved in the Community Creativity Fund, which helps support a number of artists and creatives as part of the city's COVID-19 response plan. As part of that project, a number of artists and creatives, we were able to support them in new projects, developing new works and also delivering positive outcomes for their career. And the Suburban Secrets is one of those projects. So I was lucky enough to come along to the guided walk that Louise did one Saturday morning. It was a little bit rainy and miserable, but some of the artworks that we saw along the way were just fantastic and testament to Louise's hard work ethic, developed over such a short period of time, but you could see the hours upon hours of very skilled work that she's put into the whole project. We really loved some of the old photographs from some of the buildings. Some buildings that I've walked past 100 times, but never thought to look at the facade and sort of notice. There's one down here that's an Indian restaurant, and at the moment, but it was originally developed like a Swiss ski lodge. When you look at it, you can see the hallmark. My favourite piece was Louise's Pub to Pub, where she had taken a single strand of thread for each piece of land between the Civic Hotel and the Inglewood Hotel, and along each one of those threads that she had suspended from the ceiling, a different piece of fabric which represented the different uses that that piece of land had had over the years. So ranging from a vacant block of land to first use, second use, whether it was residential, was it commercial, some things had changed from, say, like a butcher's shop to a car yard and to a cafe, or those sorts of different uses, medical centres and the like. And I just really loved I love a well-crafted piece of artwork, and you could just see the minute detail that she had gone through to put them all together, and then they were just beautifully suspended in the window, so you could just walk past and have a look, and at the bottom was a little key just to weigh them down, but sort of representing the opening of the doors to those particular properties. It was just, it was really well done. I'd love to see it on display on a more permanent basis. So the benefit for the city in funding projects like this is that we're seeing really unique projects and artworks come to fruition that might not come together in any other way. It's not something that we probably would commission directly ourselves, but it was also a really important project for the local community because it talked about the historical uses of the site, different aspects of the local community, which in turn, through Louise's research, she's been able to share with the local community artistically.
I know, it's such a noisy street. I got such a sore throat from just talking to two people yesterday. This...
That's right.
Not a problem. I'm delighted to have this artwork. Pub to pub, a streetscape in the entrance to the original Civic Theatre, which was built in 1936. It's now a block of apartments and shops, and this is actually a picture framer now, but I've been allowed to use this space. Originally you would have walked through these doors, up some elaborate stairs into a beautifully modern picture theatre,